I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Amazon has just announced the largest layoff in their company history. It's to the tune of 30,000 people, but they have something like 350,000 corporate workers, and this layoff is going to primarily be hitting those folks. So beginning Tuesday, there's going to be a fresh round of layoffs, and the company is going to be cutting deeply into their workforce. Again, keeping in mind that in 2022, they had 27,000 people being let go. This is an additional 30,000. So that equates to about 10% of their overall workplace, at least on the salaried side. And these are sweeping cuts that are going to be affecting just about every business unit, according to a person familiar with the matter. Now, it seems like Amazon has pretty much been laying off nonstop since 2022. And this is essentially their attempt to right size the COVID and what they would call the overhiring that happened during that period. So there was obviously the whiplash effect of the pandemic when it hit in 2020. A whole bunch of people got laid off, and then the knee-jerk reaction of hiring everybody back and then overhiring in some cases. But it's also a perfect storm of all these AI tools that are coming in. And these leaders are unfortunately publicly stating their intention to replace workers or at least augment their workforces. And if you read between the lines with these, augmenting the workforce does not mean that they're going to give people tools and have them use them more effectively. Augmenting the workforce means that they are going to eliminate positions, and it does not automatically mean that other jobs are being created immediately. Now, in the future, there might be some jobs being created immediately, but it's not a net, one-to-one. If you lose a position on here, it's not like a job is automatically being created over there. If that was the case, I don't think that these companies would be racing to implement these AI tools because there's no real incentive for it. Instead, what they're doing is they're eliminating positions because now they have the ability to replace people, whether it's effective or it isn't. And you have to think that we're getting close to the end of the year. And this is a time when rec activity comes to a screeching halt. You have companies that are trying to clean up their books as best they can so that they can present the best looking numbers to their board as they announce their final earnings calls. But these are the things that they're doing right now, and this is straight in our face. And Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, I feel like I make a video about Andy Jassy once every month or so, but he just keeps on giving me reasons to. Andy Jassy said in June that the workforce could shrink further as a result of the company's embracing of generative AI, telling staffers that the company will need fewer people to do some of the jobs that are being done today and more people doing other types of jobs. So if I was to look at this, you lay off 30,000, maybe that creates 500 new jobs, but it's not going to be creating 30,000 new jobs. The reality is that whether we believe in the tools or not, these companies are out there saying that they're going to be doing these things. They're going to be right sizing. They're going to be laying off. And unfortunately, in the tech space, it is happening more deeply and more frequently than it seems like in other industries, although other industries are not immune to this, and I'll be talking about that in future videos. Now, those of us who are boots on the ground, who are actually using a lot of these tools, we know that the tools are not perfect, that they don't produce the same level of output that a human could, but you have to think of it in terms of a business manager or leader who is trying to shave cost and still get efficiency. In a lot of cases, they're probably willing to take some of the slop that comes along with it if they can get most of the work done and then figure out ways to kind of adapt to the modern workplace and moving forward. But that means that they can eliminate a lot of positions. And let's face it, salaries are one of the biggest expenses that a company has. Employees are a liability, as much as we don't want to believe that, but they're a liability. They take time off. They get paid a salary. They get paid benefits. They use those benefits. They take vacations. They call in sick. They do all these things that AI tools don't need or don't do. And so I think that there is a fairly large appetite of risk that some of these companies are willing to take, and more companies are being emboldened by this. Unfortunately, Amazon is just one of many recently who has done this, and it's unfortunate to see that Amazon has cut so deeply. When you look at the total number of people that are still employed at Amazon, obviously they're still a huge company, but these 30,000 people who are getting laid off, unfortunately, are going to find a market that is just not real receptive to additional hiring in the tech space. When you look at Microsoft, for example, Microsoft, their CEO, he says that the job cuts have been weighing heavily on him. And this is, of course, after he's been laying people off left and right over the course of the last several months. And they're just one of many. I mean, he's like 15,000 so far in 2025, and I think this article was written in July, so this is even outdated. But you're seeing major reductions in salaried workforce, and these are technical roles. These are software development roles. These are the positions that were just a few short years ago were in such high demand, being paid premiums. And now it seems like it's a complete barren wasteland, at least with big tech. And some of the smaller tech companies are following suit. But the reality is right now is the market teetering on the brink of a major correction? At least, I tend to think that there's an AI bubble. I tend to think that companies will find out that there's an AI bubble, but that doesn't change the fact that there's going to be a lot of pain as the bubble pops. And that's just kind of the nature of it. But before I get deeper into this video, I wanted to introduce today's sponsor because I feel like it's actually pretty relevant. All of these people who are getting laid off are going to find themselves on the job market, applying to position after position. In some cases, they're low-quality employers. And unfortunately, the more you apply, the more your personal data is going out. And a lot of these companies are aggregating and reselling your data to data brokers, usually in the form of background checks, etc. But these background check companies have been caught red-handed, making your data available for resale to data brokers. And that ends up showing up on public directories all over the place. And getting rid of that stuff is very difficult, can be very brutal. So fortunately, DeleteMe has created a novel solution which helps you get rid of your personal information that you don't want being shared by data brokers. So what they do is they take some identifiers that you provide them and they start to look for instances where your personal information is showing up on public directories, etc. And then they'll take active steps to opt you out and remove your information, basically to scrub it off the internet for you and protect your data. Every so often, you'll receive a detailed privacy report that they'll send you that will tell you where they're finding your information and then what they're doing to automatically remove it for you. And if you'd like to get started, they've been very gracious to offer a 20% off discount if you use the code LAYOFF at sign up. So that's joindeleteme.com/layoff, or you can use the QR code that's on the screen. So let's take a look at the overall tech market specifically in 2025 and just see what's going on, if there's any more concerning trends than we're seeing below the surface. So far, we're closing in on 100,000 tech employees laid off from 216 tech companies. Now, that doesn't include the Doge layoffs, which we had 71,000. So it's just really not been a good year to be an employee, and in particular in the tech space or in the government sector. But obviously, we can see some of the major layoffs. We've got Amazon, the 30,000. This is just an ugly, ugly number. But we've got Amazon with their latest. There's some other tech firms that have recently announced. Chegg is another one that has really struggled to adapt to the modern AI tools that are coming out. Basically, some of these companies, especially some of these smaller tech companies, are finding that their systems of services are not immune to people using AI to basically make them obsolete. And Chegg is really finding it. They're an educational company that's struggling. They laid off nearly half of their workforce. Now, granted, they're a smaller company, but still half their workforce. And so you can see the impact on some of these smaller companies. As you kind of scan down through, like Just Eat just had a fairly decent sized one. There's some AI companies that are having some layoffs, but Salesforce has been really active. In September, they laid off 2 different rounds, September and August, 8,000 people. So that's a large layoff. And then as we scroll down even further, there's going to be Intel, of course, has been very active on the layoff front. They've been laying off people. This is going back into the summer. But then we talked about Microsoft already. They've been laying off a ton of people, 9,000 people right at the 4th of July. So we've got these layoffs that are starting to increase. Again, Microsoft also had another layoff. Here's Amazon. It keeps on showing up, even though this is a small layoff. But it just seems like Amazon, all they do is they hire a whole bunch of people and then they lay them all off. Now, taking a look at this chart, obviously we can see the outlier here in October, where Amazon has drastically skewed the chart. So they're at 30, now it's 34,000 people for the month of October, whereas in September, 8,000. So, it's actually, if you take Amazon out of it, the numbers are actually trending downward. But we can see every few months, looks like once a quarter, we're seeing a big spike in layoff activity. So, I wonder what's December is going to look like. Are we going to see another big spike? This is at the end of every quarterly earnings. There's no these. It's not surprising to see the numbers spiking when they are, because that's typically when they're making these hard decisions. They've got shareholders that they need to show that they're doing something. And it's really unfortunate that layoffs produce positive results on stock prices. If you look at when a company announces a layoff, you see the stock will usually spike up. And that's pretty disheartening to see that that's what the market rewards these leaders for. And if you put yourself into their shoes, if you have to keep on squeezing more profitability, you can either charge customers more, you can create new innovation, which most companies are not doing, or you can reduce cost. And reducing cost is one of the most direct and tangible ways for them to do something quickly. You remove 30,000 people from your payroll, you immediately realize a massive gain. Now you have to pay off, the severances and all that stuff, but it's an immediate gain on your balance sheet. So let's pay attention to what happens in December, because right now we're seeing a spike, and the trend is not necessarily looking good. Now, overall, we're still way below what we were in 2023, so there is some positive there. We saw massive layoffs in first quarter back then, but the trend is staying fairly steady. But are we heading into a more turbulent time, or is this just an isolated event? Anytime you see a major tech firm like Amazon laying 30,000 people off at a clip, and these big layoffs, these are not just small layoffs. These are the 9,000, 10,000 people with Salesforce, with Microsoft, with Intel. We're seeing big chunks of layoffs starting to become more frequent. It's not these small little fractional layoffs. They're now starting to see big layoffs. And as more and more companies publicly state that they are laying off because of innovation and for right sizing after the pandemic, it's usually there's one first mover who does the move, and then everybody else follows suits, because now they don't have to be the bad guy anymore. They can kind of just say we're following everybody else. And that's why during 2020 we saw so many layoffs. You saw so many layoffs everybody followed suit, and then it got real quiet. Everybody was kind of paying attention, but it's just took one first mover just to kind of break the dam, so to speak. The same thing that happened in 2023. This was a really brutal time, but really the market has not rebounded in the tech space since 2023. It was like a heyday for about a year and a half or so, but the tech space has been a very difficult place to have a stable and steady career. And if you're somebody that has a high degree of skill, double down on the AI and generative tools in your sector, in your group, in your division, in your company, and let people know that that's what you're known for. Because if you want to stay relevant in those spaces, continuing to do what you've always done is just not going to cut it anymore. The market is evolving, whether we want to go kicking and screaming or not. We are not stopping the innovation, and I use the quotes, the innovation curve that is happening. There are a lot of people out there who will say, AI is never going to replace me. But there's also a lot of people being wrapped up in a layoff right now that say AI is never going to replace me. And guess what? It is, and they are going to continue to look at it. Now, I'm not saying that AI is the only reason why these layoffs are happening. I think a lot of it has to do with right sizing after over hiring, essentially, in the 2021 time frame. But read the tea leaves, read the headlines, look around your organization. Are they starting to bring more innovation in? What are they saying in your town hall meetings? Those are the things that you need to be paying really close attention to. Assess your job specifically, because you can control that. But then look at the broader division. Is the group that you're in considered to be high risk? Is the group that you're in, the product that you're supporting, whatever it is that you're doing, are you in the cutting edge of where the company is going? Or is it something that they're talking about de-emphasizing and moving in different directions? And you have to be realistic and look at your own job through a very neutral lens. There are a lot of people who felt that they would never get laid off. And what they are finding right now is that they are getting laid off. And it's always never thought it would happen to me. But I think over the last several years, what it, if anything, has shown us is that it can happen to anybody, even the superstar candidate. And so do what you can to try to protect yourself, future-proof yourself as best you can, stay on the cutting edge of what's going on and developing in the space, and in particular with emerging technology, and then make sure everybody knows that that's what you're known for and that you're the expert, because that's the best way to stay off of a layoff list. There's no foolproof way, but you can reduce the likelihood of you getting laid off if you do those things. Don't wait for the shoe to drop. If you're somebody that is in denial, and I know that there's a lot of people out there, and I get it, we don't want to adapt to these things. Like this is, this whole AI thing is, it can be scary, it can be confusing, it can be mysterious, it can be easy to dismiss it because ego gets in the way. But this is not the first time we've had major disruptive innovation. Just think of what happened to a lot of job types when the internet came out. It wasn't all that long ago that people were working without even a personal computer on their desk. But when the internet age came out and suddenly everything started to shift from in person to online, around 2000, 1997, 1998 to 2000, there were a lot of people in denial saying, this website stuff, this internet thing will never really take hold. It's never going to replace jobs. It's never going to, and guess what? It replaced a lot of jobs. Just look at like the low-hanging fruit that comes to my mind. Blockbuster versus Netflix. I remember very clearly hearing people saying, nobody is going to do streaming. The internet can't handle it. Nobody's ever going to realistically stream. Streaming was almost a novelty when Netflix originally put it out. For those of you who are old enough to remember, you used to actually get these little discs that would come in a red envelope in your mailbox, and you would watch a couple of them, and then you would stick them back in the mail and send them back to the warehouse. But that was the beauty of it, and it was a direct competitor to the brick and mortar Blockbuster stores. The experience you gave up, and this is what people's argument was, is the experience of going into the store and picking out your video off the wall and figuring out what you wanted to do for your Friday night. That was part of the experience of going to Blockbuster, and people said nobody was going to get rid of that. Guess what? Blockbuster, I think, has one location remaining as more of a novelty, and Netflix, whether you love them or you hate them, basically completely innovated the entire space and an entire industry, basically eliminated an entire industry, and a new industry emerged. This is the same thing that's going to happen with AI. I think that there's going to be a bubble. There's going to be things that are going to burst, and then it's going to kind of figure out, like the cream will start to rise. There's a lot of AI slop tools that are out there. Most of them are complete garbage. Most of them will not be around after this bubble bursts. But the fact of the matter is that companies will be doubling down on AI tools, and big companies like Amazon are investing in the alpha companies right now. Whether the actual technology can do the work and do it effectively today remains to be seen, and you can make a valid case that it doesn't. But I guarantee you they're going to continue to tinker with it and to figure it out and make sure that it does do what it needs to do, because these companies will adapt, with or without you. So I'll get off my soapbox about this whole thing, but the moral of the story here is that Amazon, huge layoffs. I think we need to be eyes wide open. If you're in the tech space in particular, really in any industry, but in tech space in particular, pay attention over the next several months, because as we head to the end of the year, you're going to see probably another spike in activity. This usually happens around the end of the year. Surprise, surprise, during the time where you're supposed to be enjoying the holidays. How many times have we heard people getting laid off right at the holiday season? So I'm going to continue to pay attention to this. You should do it as well and take the proactive steps. Don't be caught unprepared. And if you're somebody that's in a relatively stable environment, you may just want to check out what's happening in the market, feel it out. And if you need to jump for whatever reason, just make sure you're jumping onto stable ground wherever you're heading. Be extra diligent with your vetting process and making sure that the roles that you're attracting or looking at are solid, have solid products, are not laying off, have not laid off in the past, have funding, etc., because this is just a really risky time right now, guys. Anyway, this is what's going on in the job market. I will continue to look for these emerging trends. There's another video probably we'll be doing shortly about the overall market and what I'm kind of seeing. So if you're interested in that, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you found value in this video, hit the thumbs up button. It really does help get the message out to a broader audience. If you need help in a job search, or you're somebody that's unfortunately being caught up in this layoff, check out my website at lifeafterlayoff.com. This is unfortunately exactly what I specialize in. And it's a space that I'm very familiar with, how to navigate after an untimely layoff. And there are some people that I'm working with right now on a private coaching basis who are navigating this expertly. And in fact, I just got a note from somebody who said that they originally got one job offer from our sessions, but then just sent me another note 2 months later, said, actually make that 3. I got 2 new offers that were even better than the first one I accepted. So there are people out there getting hired. There are people out there who are navigating. The guy that I'm speaking about is somebody that is, he is a person in the tech space, and he ended up landing on his feet, has a solid marketable background, and it is possible if you know what you're doing. So you can reach me through my website if you need help there. I also have some courses that I offer that teach you exactly how to work your way through a detailed job search, how to write resumes, how to approach interviewing with strength, how to use networking to your advantage. That's going to be a big thing. So if you need help there, check out A Life After Layoff. Anyway, appreciate you watching. We'll see you on the next one.